Let me tell you what my deep research and basically vision is.
I hope there's Bigfoot. I don't think there is.
I'm not telling you nothing.
The aliens won't let it happen. Happening now, breaking.
Bernie Sanders is angry.
Bears beats Battlestar Galactica.
What are the tips? Give me some tips on how to work with Wes Anderson.
Be ready to speak very fast and very clearly, because that's definitely one key thing.
I will only tell the truth. I will only
Until you and 6 kids you barely know in wet bathing suits have surrounded 9 chimpanzees outside of a Wendy's. You probably really don't know yourself, okay?
Yep. And we back.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to your new favorite podcast and the best in political, sports, and paranormal news coverage. I'm your host, Wes Anderson, and this is In the Shed. This is episode 12, so whether you're back for more or finding us for the first time this week, hey, thanks for tuning in. It's late Thursday evening, April 29th, and I am in a shed in the backyard of my home in Alabama, just so I can hang out with you tools and talk about the latest headlines, stories, and rumors in the world of politics, sports, and the paranormal. Hey man, we've been doing this show for a minute now, right? This is episode 12. So it's been longer than 12 weeks because we've had a couple of unintended breaks included in our time together here in my shed, but we have done 12 episodes now. We have built our audience up from my Meemaw to now including several countries and a growing audience in India that makes up over 21% of all of our listenership. But hey, I'm about to have a first in all of our 12 episodes together. A first here on In the Shed with Wes Anderson. Because we about to get into a feud, my tools. We about to get into a feud. I'm going to start off tonight's episode on a little bit of a rant. You see, I have a first cousin. Most of you have a first cousin. I have several. One of my first cousins is a lot like me. I'm like the praying mantis with a beard model. He's like the praying mantis without a beard model. But he's a lot like me. A little bit younger. A real cool dude. Love him to death. But apparently podcasting has become a family business. Because I get on this show here in the shed and chop up sports and politics and the paranormal news with you every week. I did it for about 3 or 4 weeks. And then my first cousin going to have the audacity to also start a podcast. And I know what you're thinking. Like, doesn't every 20 to 30 something year old male in the United States have a podcast? Well, yes, they do. But listen, apparently this is a family business. And I use the term business lightly because I do not have any sponsors here on In the Shed. We are open for business. If you would like to sponsor, we can push out your merchandise, your company, your brand to about 75 listeners right now. But we are growing. But yo, my cousin came out with this podcast. It's him and 2 of his buddies. It's called 8 Bits and Bobbles. You can find it on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. 8 Bits and Bobbles. The number 8-bits and Bobbles. I don't know what 8 bits are. I don't know what a bobble is. I certainly don't know what bobble plural is. Bobbles. I don't know. I listened to their show, man. They got I think they're up to 8 or 10 episodes. They're like an episode or 2 behind us, but they record them faster than we do, so they're probably going to surpass us soon. And I got a couple problems, man. First of all, I don't know if Meemaw will be listening to his podcast too. I assume she does because she is a supportive grandmother. But hey, we have featured Meemaw on this show since the beginning. Don't take my number 1 fan. I put out episode 11 last week. It was the only time I have not heard from Meemaw. And I just have this sneaking suspicion in my heart that maybe I did not hear about her because instead of listening to In the Shed with Wes Anderson, she was listening to 8 Bits and Bobbles. And 8 Bits and Bobbles, it's my cousin and his 2 friends. And it's a podcast about nerd culture, right? So on the podcast, they talk about all the different things that people nerd out about, the things that they nerd out about, anime, art, bourbon drinking, comic books, sports, music, all kinds of things. Whatever it is that people can nerd out about, they're going to talk about it. They got this one dude on there that be eating a plate of spaghetti or something. I heard his fork hit the plate about 15 times. But here's my problem, man. Here's my problem. It's a good podcast. Like, it's a really good podcast. Like, yo, it's entertaining, bro. Like, for real. Like, I get on there, I listen to it on the way to work. I listen to it, when I'm trying to pass some time in those dead moments in the office. I listen to it if I'm going for a jog. And it's an entertaining show. But, yo, their production value is so far and above our production value on In the Shed. Like, I'm a dude in Alabama in the backyard of my home, in a shed, talking sports, politics, and the paranormal. There are 3 dudes in Mississippi, but their production value is far and above ours. Like, we stretched that extension cord out to the yard. We set up the computer, the microphone, the pop filter. We put the headphones on, we hit record, and we go. Like, I'm it, shawty. I'm the writer, the producer, the on-air talent or lack thereof. But yo, my cousin's show is like professional. Like, I would not be surprised if they have sponsors already. Like, yo, we've been on the air a few weeks more. We have 2 reviews on Apple Podcasts. They first day, they had 18 reviews on Apple Podcasts. I thought about calling my cousin and being like, you have undercut me because you are more successful than me from day one. And if you're hearing this right now and it sounds like a complaint, that's because it is a complaint. I'm starting a podcast war. I'm starting a feud right now here on In the Shed with Wes Anderson. We are publicly feuding with 8 Bits and Bobbles because they production value is so much better than ours. And I gotta tell you, it's not even that I'm jealous. Actually, it is. It's that I'm jealous. That's what it is for real, though. Like, I'm proud of my cousin. Like, good job, bro. Like, I'm proud of you. Like, it's a good show. I'll listen to it. I will keep listening to it. But if Ramesh from India starts listening to 8 Bits and Bobbles, we gonna have a problem. We gonna have some words. If I don't hear from Meemaw ever again about this podcast, I don't know if we can remain on speaking terms. And if you're hearing me and this sounds like a promo for 8 Bits and Bobbles, it kind of is, because that's my cousin and I love him and it's a very entertaining show. So go support that show. But hey, don't forget where you started, shawty. Don't forget your first love, babies. My shedders, my people. You got to hang with us here on In the Shed because we building something special. We starting from the ground floor. We like Drake. We started from the bottom. And now we in the shed in the backyard. But we growing. We growing in India. We growing in Australia. We growing all over the map, shawties. So 8 Bits and Bobbles, I'm putting you on notice. I'm putting you on blast. I'm saying you have a good show, is what I'm saying. Meemaw, call me. All right, enough of that. Let's get into some comments and corrections from last week's show. Keystone 100, Hanobia 79, and Townsend 1. That's right, South Dakota and Oklahoma. A third competitor has now entered the fray. In the Shed with Wes Anderson has just learned of the first ever Bigfoot Festival being hosted in Townsend, Tennessee at the end of May. That's next month, shawty. The festival will include a Bigfoot calling contest, live music, food trucks, and hot air balloon rides with Bigfoot. It sounds pretty dope to me, and I know it's short notice, but hey, Townsend, if you want us, we're there. Just say the words, we'll be there. We'll bring our listeners, we'll bring the shed, we'll push that Bigfoot paraphernalia, get you some t-shirt sales. Keystone and Hanobia are sitting on their hands. You can win this thing, Townsend. Time is of the essence. We only a month out, but if you want us, you got us. Keystone, Hanobia, Townsend, whenever you are ready, you can reach the show by emailing us at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. We just waiting on an invite. I know Keystone has a little bit more time. Their festival's not until December. Hanobia's is in October, and Townsend's is right around the corner. But whoever want us, whoever contact us first, we coming out there. We gonna do the show live. We gonna do it live. Do it live. We gonna do it live. On last week's show, in talking about the "A bobcat attacked my wife" video, I called what the man in that jungle cat did hand-to-hand combat. It turns out that bobcats don't have hands. I should have said hand-to-paw. On episode 11, we also shared a story about 77 inmates in an Iowa prison being overdosed with the COVID-19 vaccine, and I've been thinking about that all week long. I went back and reread the story. It was medical staff members that gave the vaccine. Medical staff members. And it wasn't 1 or 2 people they overdosed. It wasn't even 10 or 12 people. It was 77 people. Like, hey, how bad at your job, or how careless do you have to be to not notice that you are overdosing people on this vaccine until it has happened 77 times? That's a failing grade. Like, this story should have been national news. This is a big deal. If not a multi-million-dollar lawsuit, these people should at least get a shorter prison sentence. Hey, look, I know a get-out-of-jail-free card is not a real thing, but hey, maybe it should be. That's all I'm saying. And my man Cord Overton, official spokesperson for the Iowa State Penitentiary System, allegedly. It turns out that he might maybe be a real person. I'm pretty sure this week I found his Twitter handle, and I am debating on whether or not I should tag him in a tweet and let him know that we've got an episode of the podcast named after him. I don't know. All right, that's all the comments and corrections for this week. Let's get to some listener emails. Ray from Louisville, Kentucky writes, "I think you're kind of a douche." Right back at you, Ray. Rick Pitino made the tournament. Your team sat at home. How you like them apples, huh? What you think about that, big dog? I try to be a good guy, though. I don't always make the best first impression. I'll be the first to admit it, but I'm kind of like a weed. I grow on you. So, Ray, keep listening to this show. Keep hanging out with us in the shed. I think eventually you might be able to tolerate me. You might be able to tolerate me. So just hang in there, shawty. Thank you for the email, though. Kristen O. from Cocoa Beach, Florida writes, "Wes, still waiting on that mermaid episode. You lied." I tell you what, Kristen, just for you, next week we'll talk about mermaids. How about that? I ain't mean to lie. I ain't mean to mislead you. Mermaids just are not on the top of my list. They on there now. They there, but they not on the top of the list. But just for you, you have asked twice. This is your second email about mermaids, and we'll talk about mermaids next week. You have my word. Come heck or high water, you're gonna have your mermaid episode of In the Shed with Wes. Michael from my neck of the woods in Alabama writes, "Wes, how come some of the news stories you share during the political portion of your show aren't actually about politics at all?" Well, Michael, the reason for that is because it is my show. That's it. It's my show. That's the reason. I pick the news stories, what I think is interesting, what I think you need to know about, what I think other people aren't talking about, what we can laugh at together. This is a lighthearted news show, Michael. We're going to cover some of the big stories in the world of politics for sure, and we're going to give it to you straight for sure, and we're going to be just as quick to get on to both the right and the left, or to celebrate the right or the left when they have done something good for sure. But sometimes we just need a laugh. Sometimes we need to talk about world events and not just focus on our little nation here. So we're going to cover all kinds of stuff. It's under the politics heading, Sometimes it's very political, sometimes it's just world news, sometimes it's a good laugh, but it's the news that I pick because it's my shed, shawty. My shed, my mic, my 50-foot extension cord. We gonna get it however I choose to get it. And I hope you enjoy it, Michael. I hope you enjoy it. And Mary from Tennessee writes, the Wizard of Oz set was absolutely cursed. And absolutely is in all caps, so she's shouting it at me. You mentioned a few of the bad things that happened on set, but left out the most damning evidence of all, the fact that so many of the actors, actresses, and support staff involved in making the film died young and in tragic ways. Judy Garland was not the only one. That's true. We didn't have time to get to all of the evidence when we cover something on the show since we're doing several stories. We fit what we can. We try to give you a snapshot of it and invite you to investigate further. So your opinion is that it was definitely cursed, and there definitely was some weird stuff that happened. I will be the first to admit that, Mary, and we appreciate your email. That's all the listener emails from last episode. If you have thoughts that you want to share about one of the stories talked about on our show, or if you just want to say hi, you can reach us by emailing the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Again, that's intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. All right, let's switch to this. Let's get to the news in the world of politics, and let's hit the headlines. Economist rips Biden's new welfare package, according to InfoWars. Biden is using the pandemic as an excuse for permanent expansion of government power, writes Reason. From USA Today, FDA plans to seek ban on menthol cigarettes. American police are inadequately trained, says The Atlantic. And finally, a timeline of carnage. The U.S. refuses to be at peace, and that is according to Alternet. Our first story in the world of politics, U.S. troop withdrawal from Afghanistan has begun. The U.S. military withdrawal from Afghanistan is now formally underway, according to the White House and several U.S. defense officials. A drawdown is underway, White House Deputy Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre told reporters aboard Air Force One on Thursday. While these actions will initially result in increased force levels, so withdrawing initially will look like an increase. We remain committed to having all of U.S. military personnel out of Afghanistan by September 11, 2020. Fewer than 100 troops, along with military equipment, have been moved largely by aircraft to execute President Joe Biden's order to begin the withdrawal process no later than May 1st, according to several U.S. defense officials. In addition, contractors and U.S. government workers are also departing the country, the officials said. The Pentagon has said it is concerned about personnel coming under attack from the Taliban as they depart, so it's not clear if it will disclose all of the details of the departure process, which is due to be completed by September 11th, the second time that date is mentioned in the article. There have been about 2,500 U.S. troops in Afghanistan that are openly acknowledged, plus several hundred additional special operation forces. All of them will depart under the president's orders. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Mark Milley called the withdrawal a complex operation and not without risk in a statement to CNN. We have begun a deliberate, coordinated, responsible retrograde of U.S. military personnel from Afghanistan. This is a complex operation and not without risk, and it will unfold over the coming weeks, he added. A NATO official told CNN that NATO allies have also begun withdrawing troops and that they plan to have their exit completed within a few months. The official story said, "We will not go into operational details, including troop numbers of timelines for individual nations, to ensure their troops' safety, and that any Taliban attacks during the withdrawal will be met with a forceful response." Milley spoke with his NATO counterparts Thursday to ensure a coordinated drawdown, a defense official told CNN, stressing the organized, deliberate withdrawal of U.S. and coalition forces from Afghanistan under the promise of an in-together, out-together plan. Biden announced his decision earlier this month to end America's longest war, saying that the U.S. went to war with clear goals and has achieved those objectives. The deadline that President has set for troops to withdraw is absolute, with no potential for an extension based on worsening conditions on the ground. The President's intent is clear: the U.S. military departure from Afghanistan will not be rushed. It will be delivered and conducted in a safe and responsible manner that ensures the protection of our troops, Jean-Pierre added. While Biden argued that the decades-long conflict no longer aligns with American priorities, Lawmakers from both parties have expressed concerns that the U.S. withdrawal will lead to a Taliban resurgence, reverse gains made by Afghan women and civil society, and endanger American hostages in the country and Afghans who work with U.S. forces. The military is wary of a worst-case scenario that would include a collapse of Afghan security forces and watching closely for any signs that it may be playing out on the ground. The threat is not only from the Taliban, which has threatened to attack U.S. forces come Saturday, but also from guerrilla factions with their own agenda and priorities, a considerable risk in a country as desperate and fragmented as Afghanistan, a defense official said. In his first address to joint sessions of Congress Wednesday night, Biden argued that war in Afghanistan was never meant to be a multi-generational undertaking of nation building. We went to Afghanistan to get terrorists, the terrorists who attacked us on 9/11. And we said we would follow Osama bin Laden to the gates of hell to do it. And we delivered justice to bin Laden. We degraded the terrorist threat of al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, and after 20 years of valor, and sacrifice, it's time to bring those troops home, the president said. CNN reported last week that military equipment has been flown out of the country in recent days. A key calculation will be when to draw down so-called rolling stock, included armor vehicles that allow forces to move around. The Pentagon has assembled a significant protection force to send the Taliban a strong message that it is ready to respond if they attack U.S. forces on their way out. Approximately another 650 ground forces, mainly Army Rangers, are headed into Afghanistan in the coming days as a covering force to protect troops as they withdraw, especially from remote areas. The U.S. is also sending in additional Army artillery and rocket systems to force protection. The aircraft carrier USS Dwight D. Eisenhower will remain in the North Arabian Sea to conduct airstrikes against the Taliban if needed, and the Air Force has also positioned several B-52 bombers in the Gulf region as well. On Sunday, General Austin Scott Miller, commander of U.S. Forces Afghanistan and NATO's Resolute Support Mission, said some troops were being moved within the country. Officials have told CNN that after the withdrawal begins, there will be an effort to move conventional forces and equipment out as quickly as possible if that equipment is not turned over to Afghan forces destroyed in place. So, I have several thoughts about this. First of all, props to President Joe Biden. Like, I've told you, we're going to keep it a buck with you here on In the Shed with Wes. If Joe Biden does something positive, we're going to offer praise and celebrate it. If he does something negative, we're going to hold him accountable. I don't care if you're Republican, if you're Democrat, if you left wing or right wing. Our beautiful bald eagle needs both wings to soar. But this is unquestionably a good thing. I've made no bones about it. I am not a fan of the military-industrial complex. When we are at war, there are giant corporations who are making bank. The reason it is so difficult for us not to be at war is because there are so many giant corporations who are making bank. And these giant corporations have lobbies larger than any charity, larger than many state representatives have, larger than almost any other special interest that there is. All right. They have on their board people who are in offices now, people who hold stock but also get to make decisions about whether or not we go to war and how long we stay there. And in my estimation, I am not that smart of a man, okay? But in my estimation, I do not think that making money, making the rich richer, is a good reason to put our 18 to 24-year-old people in a position to risk their lives. I'm thankful for our soldiers. They have more bravery than I have. I appreciate their sacrifice. But I don't think that a war should exist that children born the same year the war started are then old enough to enlist in that war. It's a little bit ridiculous. Like, we don't know what we've been doing over there for years. If our goal was to relocate the Taliban or to do this or to do that, fine, we gave it our best shot. Let's bring our folks home. And to be fair, President Trump tried to do this. You can say what you want about Don John Trump. I have been critical of things that he has said and done, but this is one thing he tried to do that was right. The man tried to bring our troops home, and the military brass said, no, no, no. People got in the way. People kept it from happening. And even in the article that I just shared, you see that people on both the Republican and Democratic side, some of them try to stand in the way too. They say, but what about the women in Afghanistan? What if they're not treated so well when the Taliban, what if the government falls apart? What if this, what if that? Look, we can't be the world police. We can't be nation building. We can't set up military outposts all over the world and just stay there for years and years and years and years and years for our people to get shot at. If you support the troops, if you love the troops, if you are a patriot, you got to put their lives first. They are people too. They have families too. They have futures too. And it's time to come home. So, hey, props to Joe Biden for bringing them home. The process has already started. There's a certain side of me that says I won't believe it until I see it, until everybody is home, because these types of promises have been made before. These plans have been put into place before. And then when something happens, we come up with reasons to stay. So props to Joe Biden. I hope that he follows through with his word and that every single one of our soldiers are brought home. I hope things continue to go well in Afghanistan, that they get to have a government elected by their people, that they get to experience freedom, that women get to pursue education and their dreams. I want all of those things for the people over there. I'm just not willing to stay over there for 20 more years. I'm not willing to have another generation of people who are scarred by war because there's giant corporations making money, because there's special interests who are saying just 2 more years, just 2 more years, just 2 more years. It's time. So props to Joe Biden. To be fair, President Trump tried to do the same thing. And yo, let's not pretend that there's not a little bit of symbolism going on here. You notice the date. All of our troops will be home by September the 11th. Joe Biden looking for that press clipping. Like, Joe Biden could have had him home sooner than September the 11th. Like, what are we waiting for? If we pulling out, let's pull out. If we coming home, let's bring our folks home. It take a little while. You got a lot of parts to move around. I get it. But you could have them home before September the 11th. But don't you think that some people got in the room and said, hey, if we make the date September the 11th, wouldn't that be powerful? Wouldn't that be some good PR? So great job by the president. I hope he follows through. And also, I see what you're doing with that withdrawal date. I see what you're doing. Our second story in the world of politics, Caitlyn Jenner announces run for California governor and likely recall election. This is not a story from The Onion. This is a real news story. Caitlyn Jenner announces run for California governor and likely recall election. Caitlyn Jenner, the former Olympian and reality TV star, announced Friday that she plans to run to replace California Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom in an expected recall election later this year. I'm in. California is worth fighting for, she tweeted Friday morning. Jenner, a longtime Republican, filed paperwork in Los Angeles County and announced her intent on her website. Her bid is one of the most high-profile campaigns by a transgender person in the country. California has been my home for nearly 50 years. I came here because I knew that anyone, regardless of their background or station in life, dreams into reality, Jenner said in a news release. But for the past decade, we have seen the glimmer of the Golden State reduced by one-party rule that places politics over progress and special interests over people. Sacramento needs an honest leader with a clear vision. I just have a hard time anybody wants to move from Malibu to Sacramento. But okay. Jenner, who described herself in the announcement as a disruptor and denounced Newsom's impact on the Golden State, began exploring an entry into politics earlier this year and has been working with a close group of GOP strategists to lay the groundwork in her gubernatorial bid, including Brad Parscale, who ran former President Donald Trump's 2020 quest for re-election, and Ryan Irwin, a former senior advisor to Senator Mitt Romney's 2012 presidential campaign. So you pick 2 people from losing campaigns to run your campaign. Does that sound like a good idea? Like Brad Parscale, that's that man that cried on TV for like 5 minutes straight because he was so hurt that Donald Trump had turned his back on him. And then Mitt Romney is the least charismatic person ever to run for president. You pick 2 people that manage losing campaigns to run your campaign in hopes of getting elected. Good luck. Small businesses have been devastated because of the over-restrictive lockdown, Jenner said. An entire generation of children have lost a year of education and have been prevented from going back to school, participating in activities, or socializing with their friends. Taxes are too high, killing jobs, hurting families, and putting an especially heavy burden on our most vulnerable people. Hey, in this press release, Caitlyn Jenner got bars. I'm just saying, she hitting all the high points, all the notes. Taxes, lockdown, education, people over politics. Caitlyn Jenner dropping some bars. In response to the Jenner announcement, Newsom campaign spokesperson Dan Newman said, "We always knew the Republican recall would be a ludicrous circus full of Trump supporters, which only reinforces how much Californians appreciate Governor Newsom's competent, compassionate, experienced leadership during an unprecedented series of crises." Yo, I don't think so. I think if Californians had so much respect for the governor, maybe he wouldn't be being recalled. Something about that tells me there maybe is some problems in California. Maybe they're not so happy with his leadership after all. I think she has policy positions that align with right-of-center Republicans, but also voters who fall outside that category, one person said. I like how they just said, one person said. Like, we talked to one person, this is what they said. Jenner, who spoke at the 2016 Republican National Convention in Cleveland, word? I ain't know that, and voted for Trump before publicly revoking her support in October 2018 over his anti-LGBTQ policies, has also tapped former Trump campaign aide Stephen Chung as a campaign advisor. Chung is expected to help with messaging and political strategy, according to the source involved with Jenner's campaign. If you need somebody to help with messaging, holler at my boy, Cord Overton. Recall proponents say that they have collected 2.1 million signatures, more than the nearly 1.5 million needed to get the recall on the ballot. County officials in California have until April 29th to finish verifying the signatures and then report the results to the California Secretary of State. So Caitlyn Jenner wants to be the governor. Hey, I don't know. Stranger things have happened. My wife told me about this a couple days ago, and I said, it ain't no way. It ain't no way. It ain't no way that's real. It ain't no way that she gonna win. And then my wife said, didn't I say the same thing about Donald Trump? And I was like, hey, you have a point. You have a point. I mean, if California has elected the governor, I'll be back. That was so bad. Get down. Get into the chopper. Get down. Get down. Get into the chopper. That's a really bad impersonation. If California can elect Arnold Schwarzenegger as governor, and he was a Republican, maybe Caitlyn Jenner's got a chance. First Kanye want to run, now Caitlyn Jenner want to run. I would rather vote for Scott Disick. I would rather vote for Kourtney Kardashian. Those are the people that I think would be fun to be around. Those are the people that I think make good logical decisions for the most part. For the most part. But hey, if Caitlyn Jenner really wants to win, instead of picking those two people to run her campaign, she need to talk to Kris Jenner. Because if anybody knows how to run something, Kris Jenner is the one. Kris Jenner knows how to get publicity. Kris Jenner knows how to turn a profit. Kris Jenner knows how to flip a story. Kris Jenner knows how to guide and direct a family that has lots and lots of fame. Like, I don't know if they're on good terms or not, but if they are, you might want to talk to Kris Jenner. Because if you want to have a chance in California as a Republican who used to support Donald Trump, you're going to need some help. And Kris Jenner is downright diabolical. And I don't even mean that as a slight. I mean her ability to plan. Like, I would not want to play Risk with Kris Jenner. Or Battleship with Kris Jenner. I just figured like she'd be really good at strategic games. And I don't think that I could win. And if Caitlyn Jenner want to win, she need to talk to Kris Jenner. Our next story, key takeaways from Biden's speech to Congress. U.S. President Joe Biden used his first joint address to Congress to plead with dozens of lawmakers in the room to work together and detailed a $4 trillion economic plan he said would make the country more competitive with China. Here are a few key takeaways. Takeaway 1, emerging from crisis. It's a tradition for U.S. presidents to give their diagnosis of the nation during an address to Congress. Biden made the case that thanks to a successful vaccine rollout and a $1.9 trillion relief package, the United States, which has lost more than 500,000 people to the coronavirus, is on the upswing. Now, after just 100 days, I can report to the nation America is on the move again, turning peril into possibility, crisis into opportunity, setback into strength, Biden said. Takeaway number 2, historic moment for women. Wednesday marked the first presidential speech to Congress in which 2 women sat behind the president on the dais, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi and Vice President Kamala Harris. Biden recognized the historic moment at the top of his speech. Madam Speaker, Madam Vice President, no president has ever said those words from this podium. No president has ever said those words, and it's about time. Takeaway number 3, the end of trickle-down. Seeking a historic reshaping of the U.S. economy, Biden laid out plans to tax wealthy Americans and corporations in order to fund massive investments in infrastructure, education, and low-income and middle-class families. My fellow Americans, trickle-down economics has never worked. It's time to grow the economy from the bottom up and middle out, Biden said. When you hear someone say that they don't want to raise taxes on the wealthiest 1% and on corporate America, ask them, whose taxes are you going to raise instead, and whose are you going to cut? Takeaway number 4, China, the autocratic rival. The U.S. and China are locked in a battle for global influence, and a large part of Biden's argument for investing more in the U.S. economy was the need to compete with and win against China. America will stand up to unfair trade practices that undercut American workers and industries, like subsidies for state-owned enterprises and the theft of American technologies and intellectual property, he said. Chinese President Xi Jinping is deadly earnest about becoming the most significant, consequential nation in the world. He and others autocrats think that the democracy cannot compete in the 21st century with autocracies. Takeaway number 5, a deadline for a police bill. Biden urged Congress to pass legislation to overhaul policing practices by the first anniversary of George Floyd's death next month. This was the first time the president put a deadline on the issue. We've all seen the knee of justice on the neck of Black America. Now is our opportunity to make real progress, Biden said. Takeaway number 6, overcoming the Capitol riots. Biden called the January 6 attack on the U.S. Capitol a dark day in the nation's history, arguing that America's rivals abroad saw it as an opportunity to seize on division. He pressed Congress to come together and show the world that the United States can still get things done. They look at the images of the mob that assaulted this Capitol as proof that the sun is setting on American democracy. They're wrong, and we have to prove them wrong. We have to prove that democracy still works. So, a few things here. This speech was average. It was average. It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. It wasn't a disaster. It wasn't great. It wasn't something that you look at and go, I'm so inspired as an American. It was kind of hilarious to me to turn on Fox News and hear them talk about how the president was rambling on incoherently and how he is basically a Marxist communist and this is going to be the death of America. And then turn it over to CNN and you would think that Jesus Christ himself took the podium. It was average. It was an okay speech, man. Like, it was an okay speech. It wasn't great. It wasn't awful. For the most part, President Biden did not put his foot in his mouth, did not mess up. He had one flub where in talking about the happenings of January 6th, he said that it was the worst attack on American democracy since the World War II, I think he said. And he's leaving out a few things, like maybe 9/11. Some people pointed out Pearl Harbor. So, yeah, that wasn't quite right. But look, he made some good points, okay? Talking about emerging from the crisis, like we're almost there. We're almost there, and we're doing it different. You have some states that have been almost wide open the whole time, like Florida, who's doing okay. You have some states that have been in lockdown who aren't. You have some that have found the middle ground. But we have a lot of people that have been vaccinated. I think I heard like 60% of adults have gotten at least one of their vaccinations. We got people who have decided to wear masks because they're thinking of the people around them who are vulnerable. And I got no problem with that. It doesn't bother me to wear a mask. It's not an assault on my rights. I don't see it that way. If I'm going into the Walmart, I can put on a mask for a few minutes if it's going to help the older people in there, the sick people in there. But at the same time, we are no longer in a state where we are so fearful that if anyone gets coronavirus, they will drop dead in 48 hours, because we have seen that for the most part, there are exceptions. For the most part, if you're healthy, if you're not overweight, if you're not old, if you don't have a pre-existing condition, you will probably be okay. If anything, we have learned through all this that we need each other. We have learned that we need to be better prepared as a nation for things like a pandemic, because we were not. And we have learned the importance of taking care of our body. Like, ultimately, it is on you to be healthy. It is on you to eat right, to exercise, to make sure that your body is in such a state that if you are to get sick, you have a puncher's chance. So I think we have almost turned the corner as a country. I hope we have. For the first time in a long time, we're starting to see a light at the end of the tunnel. And a lot of that is because of the rollout of the vaccine that the Trump administration had begun the planning on, that the Biden administration has executed. And so he's right about that. Look, no matter your opinion about the president or his cabinet, whether you like Nancy Pelosi or not, and many of you feel strongly both ways about her, it was pretty cool that there was 2 women behind President Biden. Because, hey, honestly, real talk, it's past time that there's been a lady at the podium. Like, it should have been a lady at the podium by now. Like, all the presidents we've had, we haven't had a woman president yet. We had one African-American president. It's usually just a bunch of old white dudes. So the fact that there were people on the stage that weren't men, that were behind him, that were there in positions of power and influence, like, that's a dope thing. You might not agree with those women. You might wish it was different women. But, hey, that's a dope thing. The end of trickle-down economics, like, yeah, it don't work. It don't work. For years, they have told us that if the rich get richer, it will trickle down to the average person. And it just don't work like that. The top 1% just hoards and gets richer, and we stay the same. And all that happens when the rich get richer is the middle class disappears, and the folks that was poor are even poorer than they were before. This whole thing with China, there's a lot of truth to that. China has a concrete plan that they have announced to the world. They want to be the number 1 world superpower unquestionably by 2040, and they are working at it. They have a plan. They have a plan, shouty, and they work and they plan. They do steal intellectual property. But even so, I'm not into this whole Cold War thing. Because that's kind of what's happening, right? Like, we kind of are entering into a season of sort of a quasi-Cold War between us and China. And that didn't go too well the first time. I'm about peace, dog. I'm about finding ways to live as a citizen of the global community. And look, we can't be walked all over. We got to have fair trade. We can't have folks stealing our intellectual property and benefiting from it. We do have to be wary of folks who want dominance in a world setting. We have been those folks. But I'm not in it for a Cold War. That's just me. The police bill, the Capitol riots, I don't see how, as a reasonable person, you can be against either of those things. We've got to address policing in America, respect to our police. However, there are reforms that are clearly needed. And it's past time. So, hey, we're going to give it to you straight. Wasn't a terrible speech. Wasn't a great speech. It was nice to have a little bit of sensibility and calm coming from that podium. Ted Cruz fell asleep. My boy Ted Cruz is wild, and he fell asleep for real. They caught him on camera and everything. But, yo, it was all right. President Biden is 100 days in. He's done some nice things. He gave a speech. He sounded like Bernie Sanders. In practice, he's not like Bernie Sanders. So he's doing some things that are far left. He's done some things that are right on track with what Trump was doing. And so far, it's kind of come out in the wash, some good, some bad. If nothing else, at least we have a little bit of stability. And as a nation, we can kind of take a breath together. We don't have to wonder what's going to be tweeted out at 3 a.m. And that's not a knock on anybody and everybody that has ever supported Donald Trump. That's just the truth of the matter, is that there's just a certain way that you want your president to operate. And even if we disagree with policy, and even if we're not a Joe Biden supporter, which I am not, I at least appreciate that he's not replying to each and every person that has ever said anything negative about him. And I've been clear on that with Donald John Trump and with Biden as well. So, decent speech, decent first 100 days. A lot that I wish was different, that would be approved upon, things that have happened that I wish wouldn't, and we'll keep watching. And our last news story this week, Burrito Supreme and fork fight spark arrests. That's right. Burrito Supreme and fork fight sparks arrest. A Crestview, Florida couple was arrested early this morning after the wife hit her husband in the back of the head with a burrito during an argument over his alcohol consumption. Oh, Florida. The husband responded by stabbing his wife in the hand with a fork. Yo, that escalated quickly. The fork's 4 tines, is that what it's called, a tine? Huh. The fork's 4 tines were so deeply, don't y'all act like you knew it was called a tine. A fork tine. T-I-N-E, tine. Huh. The fork's 4 tines were so deeply embedded they had to be removed by staff at North Okaloosa Medical Center, which happens to be the hospital where my daughter was born. So how about that? My daughter was born there, and they be removing fork tines. Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office deputies were called to the Hare Street home of 51-year-old Suzanne Hovert and 66-year-old Carrie Owen Smith shortly before midnight after getting reports of a disturbance. 66 and 51 of y'all fighting like this at midnight? Go to sleep, shawty. If y'all just go to sleep, none of this would never happen. They say Hovert was relatively calm and in good spirits, but had a fork protruding from her right hand. How are you going to be calm and in good spirits with a fork protruding? Maybe her alcohol consumption is an issue too. I'm just saying. She told deputies that she and Smith got into an argument about his desire to go out to the bar to drink every night. During the argument, she hit him in the back of the head with her half-eaten Taco Bell burrito supreme. Oh, man. She said Smith then stabbed her hand with the fork he was using to eat a Taco Bell pizza. A Taco Bell pizza. So he just out here making bad life choices in general. You eating a pizza from Taco Bell. And he left the home. Portions of the burrito were located on the floor, scattered on the sofa, and on a large lampshade. I love the detail in this story. An OCSO deputy located Smith at a Crestview bar. Smith initially said he threw the fork at Hovert but did not stab her. When the deputy showed Smith a photograph of Hovert's hand with the embedded fork, tines and all, he says Smith began laughing and reported a lengthy historic of domestic violence between the pair. Both now face felony charges. Smith is charged with aggravated battery, domestic violence related. Hovert is charged with domestic violence related battery, second or subsequent offense. Yo, she got charged with a felony for smacking her husband in the head with a half-eaten Taco Bell Supreme burrito? That seems a little extreme. Joe Biden talking about working on some policing? Maybe starting Crestview, Florida, because they out here overcharging people at midnight. A felony? For smacking her husband in the head with a Taco Bell burrito supreme. My Lord. This is the type of news that you come to In the Shed for. Where else can you find out about a couple in their 60s arrested for fighting by getting smacked in the head with a burrito and responding by stabbing somebody in the hand with a fork? You're not getting that on Fox News. You're not seeing that on Yahoo. And you will not hear about that on CNN. It's only here on In the Shed with Wes. Because we keep it real with you, shawty. We keep it real. That's all for politics. Let's move on to the world of sports, and let's hit the headlines. Green Bay Packers quarterback says he doesn't want to return to team. Tim Tebow works out for the Jacksonville Jaguars as a tight end. Cal State Northridge puts men's basketball coach Mark Gottfried on leave amid allegations of rules violations. Giannis ruled out versus the Rockets with ankle sprain. Porzingis exits game with right knee soreness. The Phoenix Suns clinch their first playoff berth in 11 years. LSU to allow full stadiums at outdoor events. Baylor's national championship Gentlemen Bears basketball team adds transfer who led Arizona in scoring last season. And NCAA President Mark Emmert given contract extension because he is a professional at failing upward. Well, my tools, baseball is officially back. So you know what that means. We gonna talk about the NFL draft, shawty. We don't do baseball on this show. If you want to go somewhere else and pretend that baseball is a good sport, you go on ahead. I watched it and liked it for 18 years of my life, but the Atlanta Braves have drug every bit of fanhood I have out of my body, and I cannot talk about it, and I will not talk about it. I am too hurt. We do not do baseball on this show. But, being as how tonight is the NFL draft, we will talk about that. The first round is in the books. All 32 teams have made their selection, and we're just going to go through the list. We're just going to take a look at how the picks went down, talk about it a little bit. This week we'll do that. Next week we'll actually issue some grades, and we'll find out kind of how the different teams did. The first overall pick was no surprise. It was Trevor Lawrence, quarterback from Clemson. He'll be joining Urban Meyer down in Jacksonville, trying to turn the Jaguars into a competitive team again. That made a lot of sense. Trevor Lawrence was predestined to be the number one pick in the NFL draft since he was like 18 years old. He's a good football player. He was clearly the best prospect in this draft. I think he'll have success at the NFL level. Don't know how much success Jacksonville will have. So it'll be interesting to see what happens his rookie year, how that goes, how they build a team around him. But he was the clear-cut number one option, and there was no secret that Jacksonville was going to take him. The number 2 pick, the Jets selected quarterback Zach Wilson out of BYU, Brigham Young University over in Utah, our Mormon friends over there. And this was not a secret either. From 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago even, they had announced that all the experts who were making up these mock drafts had said that it was going to be Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, and then that the 49ers were going to pick a quarterback at 3. So Zach Wilson goes number 2. And look, I'm not as sold on this man as everybody's saying how good he's going to be. I watched BYU play 4 or 5 games over the last couple of years. I am not a quarterback expert. Pretty much in the draft, it is a crapshoot. He's got a lot of talent. Like, he's got a rocket arm. He's an accurate passer. But to me, this is one of those 50-50 shots. Like, either he's going to be really good or he's going to be a bust. And because he went to the Jets, I lean towards a bust. Because if there is any team in the NFL that can pick a talented player and then mess up their whole career, it's the New York Jets. Number 2 was Zach Wilson. And the 3rd pick, the San Francisco 49ers picked Trey Lance, the quarterback from North Dakota State. At first, the experts were saying that this was going to be Mac Jones from Alabama. Within the last few days, they have gone back and forth. It is going to be either Mac Jones or Trey Lance. And honestly, I don't know why it's not Justin Fields. I mean, I haven't seen Trey Lance play quarterback at college. They talk about him like he's a loaded talent, but possibly a project, might need to sit for a year or two. I watch a lot of Justin Fields. To me, he looks like an NFL quarterback. So Trey Lance picked at 3. Maybe it'll be a good pick. I don't know. I was kind of surprised that they took Trey Lance. I thought that they really liked Mac Jones, or I thought that they were just putting up a smokescreen and would pick Justin Fields at 3. That did not happen. The 4th pick, the Atlanta Falcons picked Kyle Pitts, tight end from Florida. This was a really good pick. Kyle Pitts is a matchup nightmare. All right, like, he's too quick for linebackers. He's too big for cornerbacks. He plays tight end, but he moves like a receiver. He's quick. He can high point a football. This man was dominant in the SEC as a tight end. Like, they couldn't cover the man. He was dominant in the SEC. He's the reason that Kyle Trask had such a good season at Florida last year. I love this pick. I don't like this pick. I love this pick. If there's a football team that I'm a fan of, if they drafted Kyle Pitts, I would be stoked. I think that this is draft night, you know. You got to overdo it on draft night. I think Kyle Pitts is a Hall of Fame football player. That's just me. Number 5 picked the Cincinnati Bengals, picked Jamar Chase, wide receiver from LSU. He was the first wide receiver to come off the board. And I don't think he's the best. I think he's a talented wide receiver. I know that he had some quarterback instability there at LSU some of the time he was there. He's rejoining the quarterback that he had a lot of success with at LSU. But I just think Alabama has 2 wide receivers better than Jamar Chase. I think this was a pick to keep the quarterback happy there in Cincinnati, to give him somebody he's familiar with. It very well may work out, but I don't think he's the best wide receiver in this draft. At number 6, the Miami Dolphins also played the reunion game, and they picked Jalen Waddle, wide receiver out of Alabama. He's coming off of an injury last year, horrific injury that almost ended his season. He did come back for the championship game and hobbled around the field, showed a lot of toughness. Jalen Waddle is a freak. He's a freak. The man can return punts. The man can go deep. The man can go across the middle. The man can take the ball out of the backfield. He's just impossible to cover. He's super good. I'm an Auburn fan, all right? Like, I've seen this man 4 times. I don't want to see him again. He's a great player. That's a good pick at number 6. At number 7, the Detroit Lions pick offensive tackle Penei Sewell from Oregon. They need a lot of help. They're rebuilding. They're starting from scratch, and you start up front. You start up front with your offensive line, with your defensive line. So they go tackle there. No surprise. Number 8 pick, the Panthers picked J.C. Horn, cornerback out of South Carolina. I think J.C. Horn is one of the top 2 or 3 cornerbacks in the draft. I don't know that he's necessarily the best, but I do think he's a good fit for the Panthers. I think that he'll work well there. He definitely will upgrade their talent in the defensive backfield, so I have no problems with that pick. Number 9, the Denver Broncos also picked a cornerback, Patrick Surtain II. That was a shock to me. Patrick Surtain is a good football player. He is worthy of a number 9 overall selection. But Broncos, what are you doing? You got to go quarterback. You got to go quarterback. Y'all ain't got one. Y'all ain't got no quarterback. You ain't had a good quarterback since Peyton Manning retired. And even his last year there, he wasn't a good quarterback. Y'all had a great defense. What are you doing? Drew Lock is not the answer. You need a quarterback yesterday. You struck out on the trade market. This was your chance. Number 9 overall pick, and you failed. Congratulations. With the number 10 overall pick, the last pick in the first 10, the Philadelphia Eagles picked Devontae Smith, wide receiver out of Alabama. To me, he is the best receiver in the draft, bar none. People have questioned him because of his size and his strength. Randy Moss wasn't that big a dude. And Devontae Smith is uber talented. He's so good off the block. He's so good off the line. Like, this man has quickness, not just speed, but he's got quickness. And I think that that's a phenomenal pick for the Philadelphia Eagles. And he's reunited with Jalen Hurts, so they're doing a lot of getting young quarterbacks some targets that they're familiar with, which is not a bad strategy. Pick number 11, the Chicago Bears took Justin Fields, quarterback from Ohio State. I don't know what the deal is with all the Justin Fields hate. I don't know where it came from. I don't know what it is that's turning people off, turned NFL scouts off. I don't know what their questions are. I watch this man play. This is an NFL quarterback. And to me, this might be the steal of the first round, because the Chicago Bears are desperate for a quarterback. That franchise, that fan base is desperate for a quarterback. And I can't wait to text my Uncle Dennis tomorrow and ask him what he thinks about that pick. He's a huge Chicago Bears fan. And I think he'll be pretty happy. If I'm a Bears fan, I'm pretty happy with that. Now you have a little bit of hope. Now you have a little bit of promise, something to look forward to, somebody that can actually play quarterback in the NFL. With the 12th overall pick, the Dallas Cowboys picked linebacker Micah Parsons from Penn State. I think that's a good selection for the Cowboys. They need help at linebacker. And for the 13th overall pick, the Chargers picked Rashawn Slater, a tackle from Northwestern. I don't know this kid. When I was reading up on him, they said that his footwork was phenomenal. And in the first 15 picks, you can never go wrong with a tackle. The 14th overall pick, the Jets traded up, and they got offensive guard Elijah Vera Tucker from USC. This is wise. So what the Jets have done so far, they got a quarterback. They got Zach Wilson, number 2. They really love Zach Wilson. They picked Zach Wilson. Hopefully it works out. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. But then they went and got him some protection. They went and got him somebody to keep him safe. They went and got him some help up front. So at least strategy-wise, at least what they're trying to do, the Jets are making good moves. And number 15 pick overall, Bill Belichick picks Mac Jones, quarterback from Alabama. I got on the Twitter machine about 6 days ago. And at the time, it was my opinion that Justin Fields would wind up being picked by the 49ers 3rd overall, and that Mac Jones would fall to the Patriots at 15. And I was half right, my tools. I was half right. I think this is a phenomenal pick. I think that Mac Jones has a lot of athleticism in the pocket. People talk about how he doesn't have the same athleticism as Trey Lance or Justin Fields or even Trevor Lawrence. But in the pocket, Mac Jones is pretty athletic. He moves around pretty well in the pocket. He's super accurate even down the field. He's a really smart quarterback. I think he'll fit in great with Bill Belichick. And hopefully Cam Newton has a good enough season that Mac Jones sits for a year. Because if Mac Jones can sit for a year, learn the system, I think he can do good things in New England. But if he has to come in after 4 or 5 games because Cam Newton is not playing well or because Cam Newton's hurt, all bets are off. All bets are off. And honestly, I know they signed some tight ends, but really the Patriots really lack talent at wide receiver still, and that's not a good position to put a rookie in. So hopefully Mac Jones gets to sit and learn a year behind Cam Newton. I do think that's a good pick at 15. With a 16th overall pick, the Cardinals picked Zaven Collins, a linebacker from Tulsa. Never heard of that homie. The 17th overall pick, the Raiders picked Alex Leatherwood, a tackle from Alabama. And this one on ESPN was sort of being pined a little bit. They were sort of saying, well, you could have waited and got him later. The Raiders have been reaching in drafts lately and blah, 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 blah. They picked a tackle from Alabama. That's a pretty safe bet. That's a pretty safe bet. Like if you want to run the football, which they do, picking a tackle from Alabama is a pretty good bet. With the 18th overall pick, the Dolphins select defensive end Jalen Phillips from Miami. I think that's kind of a flyer. They took a flyer on a very talented guy and hope that he pans out. And with already addressing their offense in the draft and getting a top wide receiver for Tua, it makes sense to shore up the defense to get a little bit of pass rush. That's what they're going for there. And at 19 overall, the Washington football team selects Jamin Davis, linebacker from Kentucky. He only started for 1 year at Kentucky, and I watch a lot of Kentucky football. I'm a Kentucky fan, an Auburn fan. This kid's talented. He's got a high motor. That's what they say, right, during the draft. He's got a high motor. He does, though. Like, he's got a high motor. I don't know if he's really an NFL player. I don't know if he's a first-round player. If anybody can do it, it's going to be Ron Rivera, can make him into a first-round type player. He is great with linebackers. This kid's got talent. We'll see if he puts it together. With the number 20 pick overall, the New York Giants picked Kadarius Toney, wide receiver from Florida, a good pickup to increase their offensive abilities there. The 21st pick overall, the Colts picked Kwity Paye from Michigan. That's a defensive end. I think that's a good selection. I think he'll help the Colts out. And the Colts are already a good team. Give us somebody that can rush the passer, somebody that can flex out into coverage, and I think that's what Paye can do for them. With the 22nd overall pick, the Tennessee Titans select Caleb Farley, cornerback from Virginia Tech. I think he's a lot better than 22. I think this is a dude that's going to be a very good cover corner in the NFL for a long time. I think he can play nickel. I think Caleb Farley is a player that is top 15 talent, and I think the Titans got a steal here. The 23rd overall pick, the Minnesota Vikings select Christian Darrisaw, offensive tackle from Virginia Tech. Never heard of that dude. With the 24th overall pick, the Pittsburgh Steelers select Najee Harris, running back from Alabama. I think that's a match made in heaven. I think Mike Tomlin is going to love Najee Harris, love his work ethic, love his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. I think he makes their offense better from day one. I think he's going to have a great career in the NFL, and he's another player. He got picked at 24th because people don't put a high value on running backs too often anymore. He's a lot better than a lot of dudes that got picked ahead of him. With the 25th overall pick, the Jaguars selected Travis Etienne, running back from Clemson. And that's a really interesting pick. So Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne, they just graduated college and go together. They just go to the Jaguars. So right away, the Jaguars start off with a good quarterback and a good running back, two dudes that know each other, that work well together. And I think that's a good selection. I think it's a little higher than a lot of people had him tabbed, not too much higher, but I think that's a good selection. With the 26th pick overall, the Browns select Greg Newsome II, cornerback from Northwestern. He played pretty well in the bowl game against Auburn. I'll say that much for him. With the 27th overall pick, the Baltimore Ravens select Rashad Bateman, wide receiver from Minnesota. Another weapon for Lamar Jackson, and that is always a good choice. The 28th overall pick, the New Orleans Saints select Peyton Turner, a defensive end from Houston. 29th overall pick, the Green Bay Packers select Eric Stokes, a cornerback from Georgia. And he's a good player. But your quarterback just said today that he don't want to be brought back. That he don't plan to come back to the team. So maybe in this year's draft in the first round, maybe you should have thought about finding a way to trade up and to get someone like Jalen Waddle or Jamar Chase or Devontae Smith. That way you can kind of say, hey, Aaron, we're trying. But nah, not the Packers. The Packers just don't care. They gonna mismanage this man's career, his entire career. And I don't blame him for feeling the way he wants to feel. With the 30th overall pick, the Buffalo Bills select Gregory Rousseau, defensive end from Miami, another guy I have never heard of. 31st overall pick, Jason Owa from Penn State, a linebacker that goes to the Baltimore Ravens. And with the last pick of the first round, the world champion, Super Bowl champion, Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Joe Tryon, a linebacker from Washington, because they already got all their pieces on offense. And they got pieces on defense. And they got a Super Bowl ring. And they got Tom Brady. So every pick they make in this draft is just to shore up their depth. Because that's what it looks like when you have Tom Brady on your squad. So that's it. Those are the first 32 picks of the draft. A few that stick out to me right away. I really like what Jacksonville has done with Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne. I'm very curious to see how Zach Wilson does with the Jets. A talented player, but a terrible organization. At least they drafted him a tackle to help protect him. A lot of reunions with Jamar Chase joining his former college quarterback, Jalen Waddle joining his former college quarterback. And I'm really excited about Justin Fields with the Chicago Bears. I'm really excited to see how well he does. I hope that he's the starter from day one there. I hope Mac Jones gets to sit a year with the Patriots. I think both of those guys can have success in the NFL. And I think that Justin Fields is the steal of the first round. I really do. I feel like he's a good player already. I think that he has a chance to grow into a great NFL player. I don't know what all the hype was about him falling. I guess that's the opposite of hype. I don't know why he fell, why he lost his hype. But I think he's going to be really good in the NFL. And I don't know what the Packers are doing. They had one pick and they went defense. So that's kind of like, other than picking another quarterback, I would think that's like a bird finger to Aaron Rodgers, who says, I don't want to be there. So that's it for sports this week. The first round of the NFL draft is in the books. Next week, we will talk about the draft as a whole, what teams have done. We will issue some draft grades. We'll talk about what we like, what we don't like. But now, let's switch to this, and let's move to the world of the paranormal. Our first story takes us to a secret underground lab, or something. Scientists create a hybrid human-monkey embryo in a lab, sparking concerns that others could take the experiment too far. I would say that you have already taken the experiment too far. Without even reading the article, without even knowing the details, I see hybrid human-monkey embryo, and I say the experiment has already gone too far. But I digress. Let's read the story. Maybe I'm wrong. Monkey embryos containing human cells were kept alive for 20 days in an experiment carried out by a U.S.-Chinese team. Where you at, Joe Biden? I thought you were going to put a stop to this. The embryos were made by injecting human stem cells into macaque embryos as part of research into early human development, and results were published in the journal Cell. Only some of the embryos survived for 20 days, the research said. The research team was led by Juan Carlos Espiso Belmonte of the Salk Institute. I killed that name. I pronounced it so well. First try. One take. Who helped make a mixed species embryo of a human and a pig in 2017. Hey, I heard Alex Jones talk about this one time. And that man crazy. And I thought he was making that stuff up about human pig embryos. And here I am, reading a legit news article from a trusted source, and it references human pig hybrid embryos. How is this real life? As we are unable to conduct certain types of experiments in humans because it's illegal and immoral, it is essential that we have better models to more accurately study and understand human biology and disease, he said in a press release about the study. An important goal of experimental biology is the development of model systems that allow for the study of human diseases under in vivo conditions. I don't know what that means. The new study has sparked an ethics debate among some scientists concerned about creating embryos that are part human and part animal. Anna Smajer, a biomedical ethics lecturer with a crazy name, and researcher at the University of East Anglia's Norwich Medical School, which sounds made up, told the BBC, the scientists behind this research state that these chimeric embryos offer new opportunities because we are unable to conduct certain types of experiments in humans, because it is illegal and immoral. But whether these embryos are human or not is open to question. See, it's not open to question because it's a combination of human and monkey embryos. I'm tearing that one up and putting it in the trash because I'm too freaked out by this story. I do not think that is a good idea. Like, who thinks this is a good idea? Let's take an animal and a person and let's mix their embryos and see if we can get it to live in this secret lab. I guess it's not a secret lab if we know about it. We don't know where it is. It didn't say in the article. But this does not seem like a good idea. Like, where are the people on this team that are like, I think we're going too far with this? Like, why is it that in every facet of our life, in every job, there are people that are quality control, there are people who are sensible who say, hey, that's probably not a good idea. But for scientists, they just throw up in the name of science, research, blah, 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 and they just do whatever they want. They just be doing the craziest stuff. They don't care about ethics. They don't care about morality. They don't care about creating some hybrid monster that can take over the human race and dominate us and turn us into slaves. No. Science. That's spooky. And I don't appreciate it. But Joe Biden going to put a stop to it. From a secret monkey-making lab, we go to Liverpool, England. Bizarre tale of Bold Street time slips that transported people into the past. Over the years, a number of people claim to have slipped into another time period while walking along the city street. Bizarrely, those who claim to have time traveled along Bold Street were able to recount specific details from the past that they encountered during the experience. We spoke to local paranormal expert Tom Sleeman, who recounted one of the time slip tales from Bold Street. There are areas all over Liverpool and Merseyside that seem to have time slip hotspots, but the highest saturation of time anomalies is the thoroughfare of Bold Street in the heart of the city. One of the first time slips I investigated concerned an off-duty policeman from Melling named Frank. When he says investigated, does he just mean that he sat with Frank and had some coffee, and Frank was like, this is what happened? Because if that is the case, I'd be investigating every morning from about 9 o'clock to 9:30. I'd just be investigating. I have my coffee. I'd be talking to folks like, what happened in your life? How's your weekend? What's your family doing? I'd be investigating. But he investigated. Off-duty policeman named Frank. One Saturday in July 1996, Frank and his wife Carol visited Liverpool to do some shopping. At Central Station, the couple split up. Carol went to Dylan's bookshop on Bold Street to purchase a copy of Irvin Welsh's book Trainspotting, and Frank went to a record store in Ranelagh Street to look for a CD. About 20 minutes later, he walked up the incline which leads onto Bold Street, intending to meet up with his wife in the bookshop, when he noticed that he had somehow entered a dead spot of quietness. Suddenly, a small box van that looked like something out of the 1950s sped across his path, beeping its horn as it narrowly missed him. Frank noted that the van had the name Kaplan's emblazoned on its side. Frank crossed the road and saw that Dylan's bookshop was no longer there. In its place stood a store with the name Kris over its two entrances. Uh-oh, Frank, you a former police officer. You can't be going to no shop called Kris. You got to protect yourself, homie. You can't be, that's not an area you need to be at, Frank. You don't need to be there, Frank. The policeman was understandably confused. He looked in the window of Kris and saw no books on display, but women's handbags and shoes. The policeman turned around and saw that the people on Bold Street were wearing clothes that would have been in vogue in the 40s and 50s. The men wore trilbies and long overcoats, and the women wore scarves, berets, pillbox, and cartwheel hats. Most of the ladies also wore gloves. Then the possibility that he had somehow walked into the Bold Street of 40-odd years ago dawned on the policeman. Frank sighted a girl of about 20 dressed in the clothes of a mid-1990s girl, hipsters in a lime-colored sleeveless top. The bag she carried had the name Miss Selfridge on it, which really reassured the policeman that he was still somehow partly in 1996. He smiled at the girl as she walked past him and entered Kris. As Frank followed her, the whole interior of the building changed in a flash to the interior of Dylan's bookshop. The policeman was back in his own time. He grabbed the girl by the arm at the entrance of the bookshop. Never a good idea, Frank. You are a former police officer. You can't be out here just grabbing random women by the arm. Like, you just asking for trouble, Frank. That is a bad life choice. Somebody need to educate you. Holler at my boy, Cord Overton. He will help you out. He grabbed the girl by the arm at the entrance of the bookshop and asked her, "Did you see that?" And the girl calmly said, "Yeah." Why is the girl calm? "Yeah. I thought it was a new shop that had just opened. I was going in to look at the clothes, and now it's a bookshop." Okay, because that's normal. The girl just chuckled, shook her head, and walked out again. When Frank told his wife about the incident, she said that she had not noticed anything strange, but Frank was really adamant that he had not hallucinated the episode. I gave an account of this strange time slip on the Billy Butler show, and within minutes people were ringing me and Billy to tell us that in the late 1950s and early 60s there had been a store called Kris in the exact location where Dylan's and later Waterstone's bookshop now stands, and there had also been a firm called Kaplan's in existence around the same time. What's more, I also received letters and phone calls from listeners who had also experienced strange things in that part of Bold Street, where the policeman had stepped into another era. People from all walks of life claimed to have experienced time slips on or near Bold Street since Frank's unexplained stroll into the past. That's a pretty weird story. If I ever go to Liverpool, I would like to go to Bold Street, and I would like to walk it up and down a few times and see if anything weird happens. But if I may be so bold, excuse the pun, I would suggest, and this is just me talking, this is just my opinion, I'm just saying maybe Frank got a blood sugar problem. Did we ever think about that? Like, maybe Frank just need a Snickers. Like maybe we should test Frank's eyesight. Like maybe just because Frank saw something and didn't see something and was confused and thought I don't know that this is a time travel incident. I don't know that there's anything paranormal happening here. I'm going to need a little bit more evidence than some guy named Frank. That's just me. From Liverpool, England, we go to Krakow, Poland, which has an awesome name. Mystery tree beast turns out to be a croissant. Yeah. When animal welfare officers received a report of an unusual animal lurking in a tree in the Polish city of Krakow, they were not sure what to expect. People aren't opening their windows because they're afraid it will go into their house, the woman reportedly said. But a visit to the area showed the creature in question was not a bird or a reptile, but a croissant. The Krakow Animal Welfare Society said the incident was genuine. Writing on Facebook, the organization said its officers had asked the desperate caller whether the unidentified animal, which had been in the tree for 2 days, could be a bird of prey. The woman responded that it looked more like an iguana. Why was she afraid of an iguana? If it's an iguana in the tree, why is that so scary? People are not opening their windows because they are afraid it will come in. I love how when people say people are doing this or people are doing that, they really just mean themselves. That's a pro tip. People just mean that's what they think. People are saying, nah, that's what you are saying. People are not opening their windows. Nah, shawty, you are not opening your window. It looks more like an iguana. A bobcat attacked my wife. Although the inspectors knew that it was unlikely that a reptile would survive the cool spring temperatures in the southern Polish city, they wondered if the animal could have been an unwanted pet abandoned by its owners. Arriving on the scene, however, the inspectors found the headless and limbless object in a lilac tree to be a pastry, probably thrown out of a window to feed birds. The organization remained lighthearted about the encounter because what else can you do, and said that the public should continue to err on the side of caution and report any concerns about animal welfare. This lady called the authorities on a croissant. Hoped that when the authorities got there, that she tried to butter them up because they really saved her biscuit. The lady thought that it was an iguana and she was terrified. It was a croissant. Now, in her defense, I did show the picture to my wife, who is a very intelligent lady. And I said, what do you see in this picture? And she said, I kid you not, she said, some kind of animal in a tree. It's not an animal, it's actually a pastry, and it's not terrifying. It's not terrifying at all. You can open up your window there, lady. Have no fear. A bobcat attacked my wife. Nah. That's just a croissant. Take it in your house. Put some butter on it. Heat it up for about 4 seconds in the microwave. And you got breakfast. Have no fear. The Lord has provided manna from heaven in the form of a croissant in a lilac tree. Yeah. And for our last story this week, are flat earthers being serious? Members of the Flat Earth Society claim to believe the earth is flat. Walking around on the planet's surface, it looks and feels flat, so they deem all evidence to the contrary, such as satellite photos of Earth as a sphere, to be fabrications of a round Earth conspiracy. Who is orchestrating such a conspiracy? NASA and world government agencies, of course. The belief that the Earth is flat has been described as the ultimate conspiracy theory. According to the Flat Earth Society's leadership, its ranks have grown by 200 people a year, mostly Americans and Britons, per year since 2009. Judging by the exhaustive effort flat earthers have invested in fleshing out the theory on their website, as well as the staunch defense of their views they offer in media interviews and on Twitter, of course they on Twitter, it would seem that these people genuinely believe the earth is flat. But in the 21st century, can they be serious? And if so, how is this psychologically possible? I love the outlook of this article. It's like, are these people okay? First, a brief tour of the worldview of a flat earther. While writing off buckets of concrete evidence the earth is spherical, I like that word, spherical, they readily accept a laundry list of propositions that some would call ludicrous. And we ain't talking about the rapper either. Luda? The leading flat earth theory holds that Earth is a disk with the Arctic Circle in the center and Antarctica, a 150-foot tall wall of ice around the rim. NASA employees, they say, guard this ice wall to prevent people from climbing over and falling off the disk. In keeping with the skepticism of NASA, known flat earther conspiracy theorist Nathan Townsend recently approached a man he said was a NASA employee in a Starbucks in mid-May 2017. In a YouTube video of the exchange, Townsend, founder of the official Flat Earth and Globe discussion page, shouted that he had proof the Earth is flat, apparently saying an astronaut drowning was the proof, and that NASA is lying. Earth's day and night cycle is explained by positing that the sun and the moon are spheres measuring 32 miles that move in circles 3,000 miles above the plane of the Earth. Like spotlights, these celestial spheres illuminate different portions of the planet in a 24-hour cycle. Flat earthers believe there must also be an invisible anti-moon that obscures the moon during lunar eclipses. An anti-moon, you say? Now this has piqued my interest, because I am a fan of the moon. And if there is also something called an anti-moon, that sounds pretty dope as well. Furthermore, Earth's gravity is an illusion, they say. Objects do not accelerate downward. Instead, the disk of Earth accelerates upward at 32 feet per second squared, driven up by a mysterious force called dark energy. Currently, there is disagreement among flat earthers about whether or not Einstein's theory of relativity permits Earth to accelerate upward indefinitely without the planet eventually surpassing the speed of light. As for what lies underneath the disk of Earth, this is unknown, but most flat earthers believe it is composed of rocks. Yeah, probably just some rocks. Then there's the conspiracy theory. Flat earthers believe photos of the globe are photoshopped. I don't know, I've seen some good Photoshop work, like, if the earth were, I'm not saying I believe it, but if the earth were flat, would it be possible to make the photos convincingly look like it was spherical? Sure. Just possible. I'm just saying, devil's advocate, it's possible. The picture part, that part possible. Let's keep going. GPS devices are rigged to make airplane pilots think they're flying in straight lines around a sphere, when actually they're flying in circles above a disk. The motive for world government's concealment of the true shape of the Earth has not been ascertained, but flat earthers believe it is probably financial. In a nutshell, it would logically cost much less to fake a space program than to actually have one. Those in on the conspiracy profit from the funding of NASA and other space agencies receive from the government. The Flat Earthers' website's frequently asked question page explains. It would cost more to actually have a space program than to fake it. It's all financial. Follow the money, people. Flat Earth believers are not relegated to the hidden corners of the universe. Plenty of celebrities have been quite vocal with their beliefs. For instance, on January 25, 2016, rapper and singer Bobby Ray Simmons Jr., known as B.O.B., I like B.O.B., released a track called Flatline in which he disses astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson after the two had a Twitter battle over the sphericalness of the planet. This happened? Neil deGrasse Tyson and B.O.B. got into a beef? B.O.B. and Neil deGrasse Tyson were beefing on Twitter? I gotta check out this song Flatlines. I ain't never heard that one. I like B.O.B. B.O.B. had that song Don't Let Me Fall. Was he talking about some flat earth stuff on that? I don't even know. B.O.B. is convinced that the earth is flat. A day earlier, the rapper tweeted, "No matter how high in elevation you are, the horizon is always eye level. Sorry, cadets, I didn't want to believe it either." And then there's Shaq. Not the big fella, too. In a podcast that aired on February 27, 2017, the former NBA player Shaquille O'Neal that when he drives from Florida to California, it's flat to me. Shaq later said he was just kidding. Some believers have gotten creative in their quest to prove a flat planet. Conspiracy theorist D. Marble posted on YouTube on May 1st, 2017, that he brought a spirit level aboard a flight from Charlotte, North Carolina to Seattle, Washington, to see whether the plane's nose would dip to compensate for curvature of the Earth, he said. On the video, he claims, I recorded a 23-minute and 45-second time lapse, which by those measurements means the plane traveled a little over 203 miles. According to spherical trigonometry given to explain the heliocentric model, this should have resulted in the compensation of 5 miles of curvature. As you'll see, there was no measurable compensation for curvature. I don't even know what that man talking about. That's one of those things that sounds smart, but I don't really know, shawty. The theory follows from a mode of thought called the zetetic method, an alternative to the scientific method, that's promising, developed by a 19th century flat earther in which sensory observations reign supreme. Broadly, the method places a lot of emphasis on reconciling empiricism and rationalism and making logical deductions based on empirical data. Flat Earth Society Vice President Michael Wilmore, an Irishman, told Life's Little Mysteries. They got a vice president over there? In zetetic astronomy, the perception that Earth is flat leads to the deduction that it must actually be flat. For real though. The perception that Earth is flat leads to the deduction that it must actually be. Because I perceive it to be, it must actually be. Okay. The anti-moon, my new favorite thing in the world. The anti-moon, NASA conspiracy, and all the rest of it are just rationalizations for how that might work in practice. Those details make the flat earthers' theory so elaborately absurd that it sounds like a joke, but many of its supporters genuinely consider it a more plausible model of astronomy than the one found in textbooks. In short, they are not kidding. The question of belief and sincerity is one that comes up a lot, Wilmore said. If I had to guess, I would probably say that at least some of our members see the Flat Earth Society and Flat Earth Theory as a kind of epistemology exercise, whether as a critique of the scientific method or as a kind of solipsism for beginners, whatever he means by that. There are also probably some who thought the certificate would be kind of funny to have on their wall. Oh, you get a certificate? Bruh, I want to get a certificate and frame it and put it in my office. And when people come in there to take me seriously and they see that certificate on my wall, they will think twice about taking me seriously. I want the certificate, shawty. That being said, I know that many members personally are very convinced of their belief. Wilmore counts himself among the true believers. My own convictions are a result of philosophical introspection and a considerable body of data that I have personally observed and which I am still compiling, he said. Strangely, Wilmore and the Society's president, a 35-year-old Virginia-born Londoner named Daniel Shenton, both think the evidence for global warming is strong, despite much of the evidence coming from satellite data gathered by NASA, the kingpin of the round Earth conspiracy. They also accept evolution and most other mainstream tenets of science. So they accept everything, but then they're like, but this is not a ball. Nah. Don't tell me we on a... Look, evolution, global warming, yeah. I believe in science. But don't you dare tell me we on a ball. This sucker flat. Y'all silly. Y'all wildin'. As inconceivable as their belief system seems, it doesn't really surprise experts. Karen Douglas, a psychologist at the University of Kent in the United Kingdom who studies the psychology of conspiracy theories, said that flat earthers' beliefs cohere with those of other conspiracy theorists she has studied. It seems to me that these people do generally believe that the earth is flat. I'm not saying anything that sounds as if they're just putting the idea out there for any other reason, Douglas told Live Science. She said all conspiracy theories share a basic thrust. They present an alternative theory about an important issue or event and construct an often vague explanation for why someone is covering up that true version of events. One of the major points of appeal is that they explain a big event, but often without going into detail, she said. A lot of the power lies in the fact that they are vague. The self-assured way in which conspiracy theories stick to their story imbues the story with special appeal. After all, flat earthers are more adamant that the earth is flat than most people are that the earth is round. Probably because the rest of us feel we have nothing to prove. But okay. If you're faced with a minority viewpoint that is put forth in an intelligent, seemingly well-informed way, and when the proponents don't deviate from those strong opinions they have, they can be very influential. We call that minority influence, Douglas said. In a study published online March 5, 2014 in the American Journal of Political Science, Eric Oliver and Tom Wood, political scientists at the University of Chicago, found that about half of Americans endorse at least one conspiracy theory, from the notion that 9/11 was an inside job to the JFK conspiracy. Many people are willing to believe many ideas that are directly in contradiction to a dominant cultural narrative, Oliver told Live Science. He says conspiratorial belief stems from a human tendency to perceive unseen forces at work, known as magical thinking. However, flat earthers don't fit entirely snugly into this general picture. Most conspiracy theories adopt many fringe theories, even ones that contradict each other. Meanwhile, flat earthers' only hang-up is the shape of the earth. If they were like other conspiracy theorists, they should be exhibiting a tendency toward a lot of magical thinking, such as believing in UFOs. I do believe in UFOs. ESP. Not sure about ESP. Ghosts. No, thank you. I don't think so. The devil. Yeah, the devil's real. Or other unseen intentional forces. It doesn't sound like they do, which makes them very anomalous relative to most Americans who believe in conspiracy theories. So what do you think, my tools? Do you think that we're on a giant spinning ball? Or perhaps, maybe, the earth has been flat all along. Maybe those dudes in the 1400s had it right. Maybe this whole thing is just a giant table. And if we're not careful, we could fall off the edge. Email us at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Let me know, is there anybody listening to this show in India, Australia, the UK, America, wherever you are? Is there anybody listening to this show that says, yeah, I think there's a strong possibility that the earth is flat? I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear your reasons. What empirical evidence do you have? What leads you to this conclusion? Pretty much from the interview in that article, the guys say, well, it feels like the earth is flat, therefore the earth is flat. Your feelings aren't facts, shawty. Let me tell you that right now. Your feelings aren't facts. I do not think the earth is flat. I have seen pictures. Pictures can be photoshopped, but I have seen pictures. I have heard astronauts. I throw a ball up in the air and it comes down because gravity is real. And it would take a lot to convince me that the earth is flat. A lot of conspiracies I can at least see. I can see the why, you know. The JFK assassination, I can see the why. The sinking of the Titanic being fake, I can see the why. You could at least make arguments for a lot of conspiracy theories. But this one, the earth being flat, I just don't see a why. And to just say, well, it has to do with finances or NASA or space I don't see the why. If there's not a why there, it's hard for me to believe that there is a conspiracy there as well. But I would love to hear from you and what you think about it. That's all for this week. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. I can't either. It's back in the house and out of the shed for me. Thanks again for listening to episode 12. Make sure to subscribe, like, share, and review. It really does help. If you have any paranormal experiences, opinions about sports or politics that you'd like to share, you can email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Again, that's intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. I might even read it on air. Look for us on Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Tune in again next week when we'll hit the headlines, give out NFL draft grades, and finally give Kristen from Florida her mermaid episode. This has been In the Shed with Wes Anderson, the best news show in the land covering politics, sports, and the paranormal. Have an adventurous and fulfilling weekend. I'll catch you tools later. Peace out, Boy Scout. Meemaw, we made it.